Flight, we have a go for early undocking of Crew 11. This will be the first medical evacuation in the history of the International Space Station. Those words hang in the air, clinical, precise, and yet they signal a crisis nobody ever wanted to see. For 25 years, we've had people living and working on the station non-stop, a stunning achievement of engineering and global teamwork. And in all that time, through all the emergencies, spacewalks, and close calls, this had never happened. A mission was about to be cut short, not because a machine broke, but because of the fragility of the human body 260 miles above the Earth. An astronaut was in trouble, and the only way to get them help was a high-stakes, 11-hour plunge back home. To really get the weight of that decision, you have to appreciate the incredible success that came first. The story of Crew 11 kicks off 5.5 months earlier, on a hot Florida morning. On August 1, 2025, a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket lit up the sky over Kennedy Space Center, blasting off with 4 astronauts tucked inside a Dragon capsule named Endeavour. The crew itself was a perfect snapshot of global cooperation. In the commander's seat was NASA's Zena Cardman, a biologist and polar explorer on her very first trip to space. She was joined by NASA veteran and pilot Mike Fink, a retired Air Force colonel on his 4th mission to orbit. Rounding out the team were 2 mission specialists, Kamiya Yui from Japan's Aerospace Exploration Agency, JAXA, a former fighter pilot on his 2nd spaceflight, and Oleg Platonov, a former Russian Air Force pilot and a rookie from Roscosmos. Their journey began with an incredible display of precision. Their Dragon capsule docked with the International Space Station in just under 15 hours, the fastest rendezvous for a Crew Dragon in the program's history. From that moment on, life was a whirlwind. Being on the ISS is a demanding ballet of science and keeping the lights on. Over the next 5 months, the Crew 11 astronauts put in hundreds of hours of research. They knocked out more than 140 experiments in biology, physics, and technology, work that helps us here on Earth and gets us ready for future trips to the Moon and Mars. All told, they traveled nearly 71 million miles, circling the globe over 2,670 times. They became a tight-knit family, living and working side by side in the close quarters of the orbiting lab. That unity was on full display on November 2, 2025. On that day, the crew had the honor of celebrating the 25th anniversary of continuous human life on the International Space Station. For a quarter of a century, someone has always been home. It was a powerful moment, celebrating one of humanity's greatest achievements. They were a part of that legacy. What they didn't know was that their own mission was about to make a completely different and far more urgent kind of history. For 167 days, the mission was a textbook success. Then, on January 7, 2026, the first sign of trouble popped up. A NASA email went out. A spacewalk planned for Zena Cardman and Mike Fink was suddenly off. The reason was vague but instantly worrying: a medical concern with one of the crew. The next day, things got more serious. NASA announced it was cutting the Crew 11 mission short. And that's not a decision you make lightly. Officials were quick to say it wasn't an emergency deorbit, but they made it clear that the astronaut's condition needed diagnosis and treatment that you can only get on the ground. As NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman put it, the capability to diagnose and treat this properly does not live on the International Space Station. Of course, because of strict medical privacy rules, we didn't know who it was or what was wrong, a standard and necessary practice. All the public knew was that one of the 4 crew members was stable, but their condition was serious enough to bring the whole crew home a month ahead of schedule. An event like this is incredibly rare. While computer models had predicted a medical evacuation might be needed once every 3 years, NASA had never actually performed one in its entire 65-year history of sending people to space. There were a few precedents from the Soviet era, like in 1985 when a cosmonaut was brought home early from the Salyut 7 space station for a serious infection. But for NASA, this was brand new territory. The station has medical gear, but it's no hospital. Just the lingering questions about the diagnosis were enough. The call was made. For the first time ever, a medical evacuation from the ISS was set in motion. Getting home wasn't simple. It was a carefully orchestrated, high-stakes procedure that started on January 14, 2026. At 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, The hatch on the Dragon Endeavour was closed and sealed. Inside, Cardman, Fink, Yui, and Platonov were strapped in, their mission of discovery now a mission of urgent return. At 5:20 p.m. Eastern, as the station flew 260 miles over the south of Australia, the final command came. With a series of precise clicks and commands, the docking clamps released, and the Dragon capsule drifted slowly away from the ISS. For 167 days, the station had been their home. Now they were on their own, a tiny vessel beginning its long fall. The trip would take just under 11 hours. For most of that time, the crew was just coasting, their capsule like a silent meteor in waiting, falling on a perfect trajectory toward a tiny splashdown target in the Pacific. You might think this is the quiet part, but it's actually filled with tension. Every system on the capsule is monitored constantly from the ground, every variable checked and double-checked. Then comes the point of no return. At 2:51 a.m. Eastern on January 15th, the Dragon's thrusters fired for the critical deorbit burn. That burn slowed the capsule just enough for Earth's gravity to grab hold, committing it to re-entry. This is easily the most dynamic and dangerous part of any spaceflight. The capsule, screaming along at over 17,000 miles per hour, smacks into the upper atmosphere. The air, which seems so thin, suddenly becomes a wall. Friction builds into incredible heat, wrapping the spacecraft in a shroud of glowing plasma and cutting off all communication with the ground. Inside, the G-forces press the astronauts hard into their seats. Then, after an agonizing silence, the signal returns. The capsule survived the fire. At just 18,000 feet, the first set of drogue parachutes deploy, followed by 4 massive main chutes. These giant canopies blossom in the pre-dawn sky, slowing the capsule from hundreds of miles an hour to a gentle 15 for splashdown. At 3:41 a.m. Eastern Time, in the darkness of the Pacific Ocean off the coast of San Diego, the Crew 11 mission ended. SpaceX recovery boats, already in position, raced toward the capsule. A mission cut short, but 4 astronauts brought safely home. With the crew safely back on solid ground, we can all breathe a little easier. The story of Crew 11 is a powerful reminder of both the risks and the rewards of pushing the boundaries of exploration. If you find these stories of human grit and incredible engineering as fascinating as I do, think about subscribing for more deep dives into the missions that define our journey to the stars. Aftermath and legacy. Shortly after the capsule was hoisted onto the recovery ship, the hatch opened. All 4 astronauts were seen smiling and giving a thumbs up as they were helped out. A great sign after a very tense 24 hours. As is standard for all returning astronauts getting used to gravity again, they were moved onto stretchers. But this time, things were a bit different. Instead of flying straight back to Johnson Space Center in Houston, all 4 crew members were taken to a local hospital for an overnight stay and more evaluation. It was a smart precaution, letting NASA's flight surgeons work with hospital experts who had a full set of diagnostic tools. NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman held a press conference, praising the professionalism of everyone involved, from the crew in orbit to the teams on the ground. He confirmed the astronaut of concern was doing fine, but reiterated that no more details on the medical issue would be shared, out of respect for their privacy. Despite the early ending, Isaacman and other officials called the mission a huge success. The nearly 900 hours of science the crew logged during their 167 days in orbit were invaluable. Their early departure left the ISS with a skeleton crew of just 3, 1 American astronaut and 2 Russian cosmonauts. This temporarily slowed down the station's ability to conduct science and spacewalks until the next crew could get there. NASA immediately started working to move up the launch of Crew 12 to keep the gap as short as possible. The Crew 11 mission won't be remembered for the month it lost, but for the history it made. It became the first real-world test of NASA's medical evacuation plan from the ISS, a plan that had existed on paper for decades but had never been put into action. The safe and successful return of the crew was a powerful demonstration that when things go wrong, the system works exactly as designed. It was a stark, humbling reminder that in the cold, unforgiving vacuum of space, the most complex, delicate, and unpredictable system isn't the multi-billion-dollar station or the state-of-the-art spacecraft. It's the human body, And the flight of Crew 11 proved that even when that system faces a crisis, we know how to bring our explorers home.